Joining us on the phone line, a standing committee on public accounts chairperson, Themba Godi, and we have Tsepo Khadima, political analyst, Adil Nchabeleng, Transform RSA president, and Luther Lebelo, SARS group executive on employment relations in studio. Good evening to you, and thanks so much for joining us. Lucky Takisho, human rights lawyer, will also join us in a bit. Let's just look at how you react, especially with the SARS rogue unit being at the center of this, and what is the fallout, at least with the KPMG. Today's events in Scopa really didn't do them any favors.
Yeah, maybe we must first report that the last time we were here, we said we were going to do particular things to them. We said we were going to sue them. We were going to write a letter to the Minister of Finance and ask him to instruct all government departments to stop business with them. We're going to report them to IRBA. We're going to report them to SCOF. We have done all those things as we're speaking now, and that's why today they were at SCOF. But I think as SARS, we feel very vindicated, because when they behaved in the immoral and unethical way that they did, our reaction was of shock, and our reaction was that this organization has got a lot to hide, and they're trying to use SARS to run their political games. And if you watch them today, which it was SARS who said they must go to SCOF, they were waffling. Today we know that when they claim that some work was not properly done, the people that they say they didn't do the work right were given packages. Now, it begs the question whether the withdrawal of the report was in truth on the reason that people didn't do their job right, or was it the political game that we think they're playing to try to protect some people, some of which may face criminal acts. So we are vindicated as SARS, and we are continuing to say that we wish that AG should have followed on with all other companies, withdraw their work on this thing. We wish that the allegation that the Reserve Bank governor said KPMG cannot fall is true. We wish they are not true, because you cannot, on the basis of your size, commit a crime and then use your size as a blackmailing of things. So we wish that those things must not be happening. We are calling on South Africans, AG and everybody, that KPMG is unethical, does not deserve to do business in South Africa, and it must be withdrawn.
All right, Mr. Godi is not going to stay with us for long. Let's quickly go to him. Thank you so much for your time. And I mean, how relevant or even trustworthy could the internal audit of KPMG's affairs be done from KPMG internationally to South Africa to try and investigate certain so-called rogue individuals that they supposedly have fired?
Well, thanks very much. Firstly, that gentleman from SARS were not SCOF, was COPA. Secondly, look, our sense is that the problems that we have with KPMG South Africa are not unique. And I think unethical conduct seems to be very much in the DNA of KPMG if you look at reports from other jurisdictions in terms of unethical conduct. So when they say they are going to have an independent investigation, well, one becomes a bit skeptical in terms of well, they are going to appoint the person. And from what we've seen so far, I think there is an interest at damage control. So you're not certain whether do they really want to get to the bottom of the rod or not, but also asking yourself whether indeed is there anything to be investigated, or are we in this situation because there were political games that are being played.
And I mean, the presentation from KPMG was devoid of detail at best, but I think a very poorly coordinated response to what has become probably one of the most heated debates in the country. Mr. Khadima, in your view, why then do we still have certain government departments wanting to do business with KPMG?
The question will be, for how long would they express such a desire to continue doing business, or to even advocate that KPMG should be forgiven? As the old adage goes, I think KPMG in this case have been nothing other than the architects and the authors of this misfortune. So therefore, I can't see how anybody and specifically based on the testimony that they led in Parliament today before SCOPA, I just cannot see how this firm will be able to survive. They still have not been able to. 2 weeks or just over 2 weeks after the event, they still have not been able to give details as to who actually was the complainant that gave rise to their wanting to review the work that they did on those 2 specific accounts. And that complainant, what was the processes that were followed in processing the complaint, and also who presided over that investigation or that review, but also what are the alternative facts. It's one thing to say, I'm withdrawing one section, don't rely on it, but you have to come to with an alternative finding of fact. They still haven't done that. But when you look at it, today we know they got 3,900 or so contracts with government. They got 2,500 audit clients. 40% of their revenue in South Africa comes from non-auditing related work, which is from consulting. That is, which by the way, and we saw this when we were dealing with the expose on IFMS, that is where there is absolute profiteering because those rates are not regulated. So if anything, the question that I think is not just only applicable to KPMG, is applicable to all of the auditing profession in this country. What on earth are auditors still doing with this non-accounting related work, which has been profitable but absolutely of no value to the taxpayer? Auditors must be auditors, and this so-called consulting businesses that they do, now we know what it leads to and what has led to. I think it's for us to worry as a country that we have been ripped off, if anything. But also, lastly, Cindy, I just want to reflect this. Why are we concerned about what really the auditors are? I keep making this point. We have Mr. Lebelo here from South African Revenue Service. He has to rely on the statement produced by these auditors on whether or not a corporate entity, that which they claim was their profit, is indeed their profit. Now, if we cannot rely on the findings of the auditors, or we can have them admitting wrongdoing as they have done, the question then that must be asked on the account that billions and billions of rands are siphoned out of this country, and they are the auditors that are presiding. The auditing profession as a whole is presiding over the illicit flows, and they are authorizing it, and SARS at the end of the day is not able to collect all the tax that is due. So we are worried, we are horrified, but we must demand action, because the audit profession is supposed to be the safeguards, and they are not the safeguards.
Yeah, and it was quite telling in Parliament today, in front of SCOPA, that they couldn't even quantify what material difference they've made in their interventions while doing auditing business. Safe to say only Joburg City or whatever. That was also just a second thought. It's a Pandora's box, it seems to me. And the question is, why the over-reliance on the multinational big four auditing firms still in South Africa?
The issue of too big to fail has been explained today. We don't have more than 4 big auditing firms in South Africa. And as a result, what we've constantly been saying, that South Africa is run by a mafia group of individuals whom we have come to term as white monopoly capital, is indeed in control and in charge. This is a group that has instructed the South African Reserve Bank governor to make a statement to say that the 4 big banks cannot remove one, KPMG, out of the mix of the 4 auditors. Why? Because if they do remove them, they are going to create an imbalance. These guys are enjoying KPMG, even when it has been found to be corrupt and to have actually given fraudulent reports. They still enjoy 5-year contracts with regards to the banks. Not only that, the state today gave an undertaking under the Auditor General that instead of the 24 months contract, which is the 2-year contracts, they will just actually cut the 2-year into a 1-year extended contract in order to allow KPMG, one, to still continue making money out of the state. Secondly, to ensure that KPMG cleans up all that mess that it has done. And worst of all, through the Scopa hearing, we heard clearly, coming from one of the executives out of KPMG says, nowhere in the world would you find something called a clean audit produced by an auditor's company. This is things that we must start now really interrogating deeply and getting into the intricacies of it. And as we see it from a South African point of view, we are at a disadvantage. Here we have a course called radical economic transformation, which we are championing. If we were to say KPMG should actually be penalized, should be charged for corruption, and should be actually closed out, do you know how many opportunities, by the way, black audit firms and individuals will have? Over 300 companies can be created overnight out of just one account that KPMG is enjoying. For black audit firms to come into the play and start becoming participants in terms of the economic space. So the issues that we're dealing with are not small issues, but I've seen a lot of timidity today, one coming out of Scopa. Secondly, the opposition parties were having a wonderful tea party and actually nicely praising KPMG for having done some level of corruption, not even calling it corruption. They were actually saying, guys, we can forgive you, go and do your homework and then clean up your house and then come back when you're clean. I mean, this is utter nonsense and rubbish. We need to be serious, and we need to start seeing people being arrested. We need to start seeing these companies being taken to task. Arthur Anderson, out of the Enron scam and saga, was completely taken out of the top 5 audit firms in the world. What is stopping KPMG from actually being removed again?
Well, let's just test that timidity, the phrase that you use, Mr. Gordy, in your approach today. And what muscle really does Scopa have in dealing with what's now been termed white-collar crime, if you want to call it that, and responsibility or accountability not being taken?
Well, I think that's a judgment call that we cannot make on ourselves. But I think that as a committee, we have not spared KPMG, and I think that either than ourselves, KPMG had not been held to account and had not been exposed to broad daylight. I think this hearing assisted not only ourselves but the public to see that indeed the stories that were spoken out there about KPMG could today be confirmed. And that's why even now we're having this discussion, which is actually assisting to enlighten the millions of people who are watching this program that KPMG or audit firms are in there for the money, not for the public good.
All right, Lucky Tekisho is also with us. He's a human rights lawyer. Just the demeanor of KPMG and the response of one of the Scopa members even reprimanding them, saying that, you know, they're being arrogant and not coming forward with information. The point about the 23 million rand, if found to have been on the wrong side of the law, they're willing to benevolently give that money back. What do you make out of this posture, Lucky, especially with the Reserve Bank almost giving them a safety net?
No, that's true. I think they are arrogant. And the reason for that, I think it has been mentioned, we need to remember that KPMG is an important part of the white monopoly capital network. That is why you find the likes of Trevor has to plead with people that KPMG must not fall. This is a very problematic statement, by the way. But what is critical is that we need to open up space, you know, a space for black auditing firms. And we think that KPMG must be able to fall fast and hard. So that space must be able to open for the likes of your Sakela, Tagisos, and Sizwes and Gubanis, so that they must also be able to acquire more clients, and radical economic transformation must be able to be speeded up. So it's possible that their license can be terminated in terms of the law, for as long as investigation has taken place and they have been found wanting, and we think that must happen with speed, so that we must be able to speed up this radical transformation, economic transformation.
Lucky, thanks so much. Of course, we have Luther Lebelo, and I think with the reputational damage that a lot of the controversy has been on SARS, the difficulty in relation to the former finance minister and the commissioner, now comes this internal investigation from KPMG that essentially says we've done, with a lack of oversight here and there. How long then would we be able to investigate other reports or audits that they have done that we may not even be able to uncover because they're essentially busy cleaning up at the moment?
You know that there are certain professions that an error becomes too big to waste time and go back. And this is one of those errors. KPMG must be decent enough and say bye-bye to the people of South Africa. And I'll give you an example. We said when this matter came that we believe this is a political game. And we are happy that the chairperson of SCOPA today seemed to see that, because at least today it was factually open and he can see that. KPMG was trying to exonerate the people that SARS has disciplined, and they were trying to exonerate and weaken the criminal case that we have opened. And they thought by throwing the KPMG report under the bus, which I don't know what it means, they were exonerating those people. But they shot the wrong sheriff, because the disciplinary and the criminal case was open for other reasons, not the KPMG report. But that is one part. Second part, the chairperson of SCOPA asked a very critical question. Actually, he made a comment when he closed. He said, KPMG, you didn't answer my question about if I do work for you, and then you give me the report, I give you the money, whose report that is? He asked that question and they didn't respond. And that is exactly what we said last week, to say they have no hand into that report. They had no hand to comment, and that's why we're suing them. The second thing, if you've got a report, and I'm giving an example, if you've got a 60-page report and you are withdrawing 3 pages of it, but you're willing to pay the whole 23 million, KPMG's arrogance made them believe that we can throw away the 63 million, but with that government of South Africa, we'll get deals now, and we'll cover that money. How do you flush 63 million? We never asked for the money. And the SCOPA chairperson asked another important question. He said, if you couldn't meet with SARS that morning, and you go and issue a media statement, and you're saying it was urgent. Urgent from who? Who was putting pressure on you to issue that thing? And then later on you go and you meet with the former Minister of Finance and the former Deputy Minister of Finance. London, the CEO flies to South Africa, he comes and meets with those two. He doesn't meet with SARS, who's a client whose name they've destroyed. Why? Why that? Why KPMG in their report? By the way, the KPMG report didn't say, the KPMG report said, we don't find any direct link with the rogue unit and the former commissioner. But as the accounting authority, it is inevitable that you should have known about the rogue unit. Now, that report has got a number of conclusions. Why do you, KPMG, feel that they're saying we're withdrawing this thing or apologizing to Mr. Gordon, when there were other people who were mentioned? And that's what we're saying. KPMG tried to play the politics that did not understand. They've sent themselves under the bus. They must not blame anyone. They must fall. This is the last point I want to make. The gentleman who investigated Van der Walt, I just read a report now from Daily Maverick, a report. He has come out now to Daily Maverick, and he's saying KPMG is not telling the truth. He followed all the processes. He has got emails. He has got reports. He said that.
So this is the tip of the iceberg.
This is the guy who investigated. He says, no, KPMG is not telling you the truth. We followed all the internal processes. And if SARS gives me permission to disclose, I'll disclose everything. And we are saying he must write us a letter and seek that permission. We're going to give him that permission, because for us, we want the truth to come out. Because now it confirms when we are saying as SARS. There is nothing wrong with that report. The problem is that they were trying to play politics. And SARS doesn't play politics.
I think conclude the story for us, Tepo, in that the political game, as has been alluded to, would have particular characters. What would the rationale, what would be the motivation for KPMG then to withdraw a particular conclusion that implicates especially Finance Minister, former Finance Minister?
I don't think that they themselves know, but if anything, what are we learning out of this? One of the things that we learn now is that the Latin goes, quis quos custodiet ipsos custodiet. Who guards the guards? Who polices the policeman? So here we have that the Auditing Profession Act of 2005 is inadequate because the organ of statute called IRBA has not been able to do its job as it's supposed, or as we would have expected them to have been able to do their job in terms of taking hard action. Right now, they are still constrained from taking punitive sanction against a self-confessed offender. So that tells us that there's a weakness in the system that has to be taken into account. But for KPMG, by the way, this is not just the 2 accounts that we can look about. We know about the allegation in the 26 billion rand theft out of JCI, where they worked with Investec Bank. And the late Barry Sargent wrote extensively, even wrote a book about that. He has never been challenged in any court of law in this country to overturn his findings that he made from his investigative journalism work. So if we can look at that and we look at a whole host of others, I think there was a report in the Sunday Stand in Botswana that again KPMG is involved in another 200 million Pula scandal, and the list goes on. And today, the testimony that they led, and also they were not able to explain what constrained them from following the requirements in law as contained in the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act of 2004, Section 34. They have not been able to actually report to the law enforcement agencies without any substantive reasons on why they were constrained. So if anything, I can see how, if we do not deal properly with KPMG, the whole of the auditing profession, every financial statement that gets signed by an auditor, we have a question mark. Can we afford that as a country? Can the Revenue Service afford to lose out on the tax that they're not able to collect because the auditors are legalizing the defrauding of SARS?
All right, we're going to have to leave it there, I'm afraid. Thank you so much, gentlemen. As always, Adil Nchabeleng, President of Transform RSA, Tsepo Khadima, Political Analyst, and Luther Lebelo, South African Reserve, or Revenue Services, rather, Group Executive for Employment Relations, and Scopa Chairperson, Themba Gori. Thank you indeed. We'll take a quick break, and we'll see you on the other side. Don't forget, tune in for ANC Decides just after this.